planets and the elements indicated, and the empyrean or the divine realms above. The modern astronomer looked at it for a moment and said, it's rubbish. It's not the way solar is at all. This isn't it. This is pure fiction. Well, it may not be fiction, for the reason that reality may not be physical. And no matter how far we go, or how many planets or parts of the universe we discover, we may not have the answer. So instead of ridiculing this old idea, some have taken it and created from it formulas for the reconstruction of life. Now we know that the ancient mysteries were the sacred institutions of knowledge. They were the universities. They were the gymnasium of education. They were all things to those who sought to know. So these ancient institutions accepted disciples into their structure by a system of rites or tests called initiations. And now in most cases, these initiations were 7 in number, and they advanced from the material to the most abstract. They formed the rungs of a ladder of growth, a ladder of unfolding internal potentials. The disciple ascended the ladder by overcoming the negative attributes of each of the 7 planets. He learned how to use knowledge and not abuse it. He learned to understand the difference between love and lust. He also sought to understand the difference between education and knowledge. These things gradually developed in many countries. In Babylonia, the goddess Ishtar descends through the 7 gates to rescue the dying Attis or Adonis. The 7 different levels, like Muhammad, climbing the 7 rungs that fell from the sky, which led him up to the uppermost, and at each of the 7 gates was one of the 7 patriarchs of the Old Testament. But when he came to the 7th gate, so strangely enough, in a Muslim book, the guardian of that gate was Christ. Now all this has something to do with astronomy, because the ancient charts show these gates as parts of the orbits of the planets, the psychological universe lying behind the literal one. We find everywhere in the mysteries of Mithras the steps. The Mithraic philosophy reached Great Britain, and there still in the great houses of parliament and law are the symbols of the ancient rites. The Templar's headquarters in London was a place of initiation with 7 steps. All of these things remind us that these steps represent qualities. These qualities each rotates around its own sun. The emotional universe rotates around the intellectual or mercurial world. Everything works in an orderly manner. Now we go into the human body, and this is what the Buddhists call the mysterious cave of 7 parts. The 7 parts are the organs of the human body recognized by the ancients. These 7 vital organs are strengthened and intensified in their functions by the contributions of 7 endocrine glands. Every part of the system works together, and to get a key to one part comes far towards opening all the rest of the mystery. We know that some of it has even reached into modern anatomy in names and words. We know about the pia mater in the brain, the thin, a gentle, a kindly mother. We know also that the upper axis of the spine, where it joins the skull, was known even in science as the pyramid. All kinds of strange things. The spinal column, with its 33 segments, still corresponding with the degrees of the ancient mystery systems. So we have all kinds of things to think about relating to this ascent from the superficial to the essential. This descent, which is a mystical experience, as John expresses it in the Revelation. The revelation of John is almost a completely Gnostic work, dealing with initiations into the Gnostic rites. John is picked up and carried through the spheres and comes finally to the gates of the Empyrean. And there the upper world is revealed to him. All of this was part of the philosophy of antiquity. Now we can come back to the modern world and we can say, but there doesn't seem to be any proof of this. There doesn't seem to be any reason why we should expect to find something strange and mysterious at the top of this mysterious ladder that we talk about climbing. The ladder that was known to be pointing up to what the Egyptians called the Jewel of 7 Stars, which formed a constellation at the head of the ladder. All this was part of something. Here we have in India the mystery of the 7 chakras, aligned along the sympathetic parts of the gangliated structure. We also find the mysterious yogas, 7 yogas, tied into these 7 gangliated centers. Everywhere 7 days of creation. And all these things tie into something that we are trying to put together to find out what kind of a world we live in. For a long time it didn't really mean too much to us. We were getting along pretty well. The Bible told us that we would live 70 years. Well, when they came time to translate the Old Testament, the high priest Eliezer selected 70 elders to make the translation. And the first translation of the Jewish Bible is called the Septuagint, or the work of the 70. Every time you look around, you find 70. You find some reason for it. Now, in some cases, it is obvious that it is arbitrary. But it can't be arbitrary in all cases, because it ties into too many vital facts that we know in our daily experience. We know the octaves of elements just as truly as we do them in music. So out of all of this, there comes this vague suspicion that there might be some way of breaking through this mystery to find out something about the reality of ourselves. Even old Omar in his Rubaiyat describes that he went through the orbits of the planets and sat upon the throne of Saturn. Everywhere we have this same analogy, east, west, north, and south, and it means something. We know the ancients recognized 7 races. They also recognized 7 continents. All the way through, the septenary had to hold true. Now, what does that mean, perhaps, in our own thinking today? Suppose we assume that the individual himself has a septenary of faculties, that he has various levels of insights, that he has various ways of measuring things, and that all these, except the visible faculties, are invisible. That somewhere there must be an answer. It is not possible to assume religiously that this creation is without a cause. And it is not possible scientifically to prove with any degree of inclusiveness that everything that exists is merely an accident, that things just happened. Things don't just happen, because there are too many evidences every day that things happen according to rules. And today there are many, many people who have experienced what we would commonly call miracles, simply because they intuitively kept the facts of life straight, whereas somebody else had mixed it up for themselves. So we have this problem of trying to understand the rights of the mysteries, how to penetrate into this structure and see why it answers all questions if we find out the key to them. Now, the key, it begins with a very simple point. It begins with the earth. The earth is the foundation upon which the ladder rests. And in man, the physical body is the foundation upon which the ladder of his spinal cord and column rests. It is also true that this physical situation that we have is the beginning of something, that all through the universe there is an interplay of various forces and factors. The other planets of the solar system certainly have mutual influence on each other. Therefore, the whole universe is one tightly tied bundle of processes, There is nothing accidental, incidental, or unimportant in this process. It is a complete